Well, I don't see it from this angle very much, but I was wondering if there was single-use plastics up there. That always scares me a little bit, just packaging in general, but you have all this stuff.
Yeah, but
That's
another thing
never
is
going to be used again.
exactly.
And you can't recycle it.
Right. Just another question, I guess, to you guys is, what do you guys think when you hear the word climate change, or when you see
Politics.
Politics. Anything else?
Like,
Like, what would you?
10-year-old that's into it, so just environment. That's what's happening.
Just environment, like something, when you hear climate change, doesn't sound like anything positive. It's like, something that's, it's like an alert.
Arctic shrinkage.
Issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Climate change, Arctic shrinkage.
Right. Those are all good answers. Yeah, you're right. It reminds me of politics and issues that seem larger than us as people. That's kind of what I'm also getting. Like, this is an intimidating amount of words, and the fact that, parents are expected to teach their kids a lot about, the social world. It can get a little bit overwhelming when there's terminology that, I guess, saturates the issue and kind of looks over how it affects people on a daily basis. Which is why I also want to talk about things that are missing, right? When we talk about climate change, we often don't talk about how it disproportionately affects people of color. And we'll go into the statistics about that a little bit later. But words like overburdened communities is used in laws specifically now, and that just refers to places that experience the impacts of climate change more than anybody else. And we have like graphs to show you and stuff, but places like Newark, Irvington, Patterson, they're considered overburdened communities. So vulnerability, health disparities, resilience, coming up with solutions in our own communities to combat climate change, even if it's, opening a center for cooling in the summer for homeless people, etc. These are all things that the real world people, organizers like me and Asada, think about when we talk climate change. What can we do to help the most amount of people in the fastest way possible? Because climate change, we all talk about issues, 100 years from now, a couple months from now, all of that. But to break it down into pieces that are more understandable and especially palatable for kids, let alone adults, we have to talk about what it means to our personal lives. So, all right. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is the different ways that communities of color and overburdened communities experience, climate change. The first one, like I talked about, is disproportionate impacts, because a lot of, and I think I saw some language like this yesterday, but basically the idea here is, and what climate advocates are really pushing for right now in intersection with racial advocacy, is that for communities that were pushed to the sidelines, we experience climate change first because they don't care about our communities in the first place. Right. So if we look at places like Newark that has a big airport that's always expanding, but we have people, homeless on the streets in Penn Station. We see the ports, everybody, all the cargo or whatever is coming into Newark and all that pollution. And Asada can talk a little bit more about that because she's done a lot of outreach in Newark specifically. But they experience disproportionate incomes of environmental racism. Another thing is economic disparities, which, inadvertently affect how climate change impacts certain people. So if you can't afford an AC during the summer, if you can't afford a heater during the winter, that's directly caused by climate change. And there's, a little spoiler, Newark is actually 8 degrees hotter than all of the surrounding cities.
Yes.
And that's because of air pollution. The ozone layer is just thinner there, diesel trucks, making it hotter. So when we talk about economic disparities and needing, ACs in Newark, those are really important issues to have, and they shouldn't be overlooked. So
and just to jump in real quick, when you talk about the heating effect,
that's called an urban heat island. So we're living in an urban heat island in North.
I've
And
never heard that term before. That's very interesting.
right, right, and
Yeah.
you know you want to get to know this because this is impacting your quality of life. You know, this is affecting our children's health, your health, our elderly's health, and we want to make sure we get in front of this and figure out ways to address this before it gets worse because it's already really terrible.
How about breathing issues for children
Yes,
in the inner cities and stuff?
Yes,
I know
it's
that
definitely
asthma
worse.
is higher.
right. Like in
And-
North,
Yeah.
more children have asthma.
Exactly.
And our children are hospitalized 30 times more than the national average. And that's because of, you know, the environment that we're in. We're in it like like I said, we are in overburdened communities and they're also called environmental justice communities of concern as well. And I'll get in a little more into that later.
So, yeah, exactly. So health inequities, like that's the exact reason why children are being hospitalized at higher rates. You know, I know a big thing at North Public Schools this year is like not having ACs in certain schools. You know, that's actually terrible. Like kids can be having heat strokes in class. And these are issues that are directly due to the economic, you know, system in Newark and how it works. The last one is policy and representation. We're going to talk about some policies that are more hopeful for the future in terms of climate change. But the reality is that a lot of climate change policies aren't adequate enough to not only represent the issues of real people, like they usually favor big businesses and companies, but also we don't have a lot of protections in place for urban spaces, green urban spaces specifically. So.
Do you guys also touch on food deserts and stuff of that nature?
A little bit,
And the fact that when some children of some of these communities, they have nothing to do.
yeah.
And so they're stuck in the house or they're not, there isn't anything for them to do during the unschool year, the
Right.
summer, the days off.
Yeah,
So-
yeah. We talk a little bit about that in like groups that are popping up for children to engage in, you know, environmental activities.
They
I
used to have something called the Fresh Air Club. Do they still have that?
I'm not sure, but I know North
It
has
exists, but they're very, it exists.
yeah.
Yeah, I know they had it when I was a kid. We would get kids from Philadelphia coming to hang out with us when we were, because I grew up in North Central Pennsylvania.
Very limited
And,
seating
yeah.
and funding and scale back. My sister's from Allentown, Bethlehem area.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. So we used to get kids who were come in and they'd hang out with us for 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And then they'd go back, but it's like they were still going back to nothing to do, no programs in place for children. And I can't imagine what it's like today.
Yeah, we definitely need to do better in terms of like programming for kids. But I know for sure, at least from middle school on, there are a lot of programs that are trying to help kids get involved in greener jobs, you know, learning about the environment and just having a deeper connection to it
Mhm.
because it's not talked about a lot, but you know, having access to green space affects mental health
Yes, it does.
significantly.
Yeah.
And when kids are in the house all day or the parks aren't safe, et cetera, that, you know, emotionally impacts them and how they do even later on in life. So, but I'll let Sada take it.
All right, so as I was explaining a little earlier, so climate change and environmental justice go hand in hand, right? Because there are certain areas, communities, people that experience the effects of climate change differently than others. Many don't have the resources, right? And they're already in areas where because of things like redlining, they're already experiencing a atrocious environmental impact. And then you have climate change coming in with this, which is causing like severe flooding, right? So not only are these places underwater, but when they have toxic facilities nearby, they're also getting toxic chemicals in the water. And
Mold.
right, exactly. And then that triggers health impacts, which is really terrible, right? So when you have limited access to clean water, clean air, and green spaces, you know, you're even more vulnerable to the effects of climate change. And that's why education and advocacy, empowerment, you know, it's important to be aware of these sort of situations. You know, we want to make sure that everyone understands what is going on so that we are better to better able to advocate for ourselves and our families and our communities. So there are like different things you can do, and one thing that Southwood Environmental Alliance does is we have air quality monitoring projects to actually track the air pollution that we're experiencing in the Southwood of Newark. We specifically monitor particulate matter, which is tiny particles that you're literally inhaling every day because it's in it's in the air, right? And this is causing it's small enough to get into your bloodstream, and this is affecting people's respiratory health. Sometimes it's leading to exacerbated conditions like cancer, right? And people are dying. And we want to make sure that we are using this data to educate the community of what's going on, but also advocate for stronger policies and regulations that help mitigate these emissions and help make our lives better for the future. And that's just one project. Like there are multiple things that people are doing to track the environmental quality in their neighborhoods, and there's also government tools that help as well to let you know what's going on. And I'll let X speak to that.
Oh, excellent.
So basically what Asada just said, that data is exported from the Environmental Protection Agency of New Jersey, and they put all of that into an interactive map for people to use. It's a little bit confusing, so I only put screenshots up, but this is some of the things that you can filter the map to, I guess, show you. Fine particulate matter, which Asada was talking about, cancer risk from diesel particulate matter, cancer risk from air toxins, non-cancer risk for air toxins. They have a whole bunch of things that you could be measuring specifically for your community. I put in my address and it showed me like a map of Newark and specifically where certain things were concentrated. It shows you the traffic on your street. So like how many diesel trucks are going on your street per day, because that matters a lot in terms of the air quality. So if you live, by a factory or a warehouse, you have much worse quality of air than, somebody who lives in an open free space.
So I have a question. Do they have anything that as someone living in an apartment or a home that they can measure themselves? Is there something like that?
Yes, there are several types of air quality monitors that are out. Like one that we use we use several. So we have a purple air monitor, and right now we're currently using them. We have 10 locations in the South Ward where they're posted outside of facilities, but Purple Air also has monitors that you can place into your home. There's also mobile monitors, so that one's a stationary monitor, but there's also monitors where you can actually wear around your neck and track your air quality as you go about your daily activities. So we have Flow Tube, we have Atmo Tube, we have Air Beams. There's a lot of things you can use to help track the quality of your air, track the air quality around you, and then use that to better prepare for what's going on. So if you need to mask up, N95 is not only helpful for protecting us against COVID, but when we have terrible air quality, that helps filter out some of the air pollution that we're breathing in as well.
Do any of these organizations provide these for free?
Not yet. Not yet. We are working towards that. Some of these monitors could be a little bit of the pricier side, but that's why we're trying to push for funding so that we can be able to provide these monitors for free for the communities that need them.
Especially for people who are cancer victims, asthma victims.
Right.
Yeah.
COPD.
Yes.
Another question, in terms of, and maybe this, I'm getting a little bit at a discussion, in terms of monitoring the air quality in particular areas of the city. Is there any, regulatory, any governmental, aspect to it in terms of monitoring, like this part of the city, we noticed that the air quality is worse. Is there anything that they put in place to mitigate that? Like when, like you said, number of trucks come through, is there any way to cut the traffic down or say, I want to stagger the deliveries between this time and that time to kind of mitigate that? Is there anything in place for that?
No, you're actually right on the slide. This data isn't just data. they use this data to put permits in place for these businesses that are polluting the air. And, it's not a one size fit all process. So like say if there's one warehouse that's specifically emitting like, or 10,000 trucks come out a day. The government takes that data and is like, okay, well, we're gonna put a permit. You can only work in this area, this overburdened community, if you have what do they call it? A positive impact. If you essentially benefit the community more than you take away from it.
Yeah,
Or
are they
even
measuring
neutral.
that though?
Yeah, that's what I was
Yeah.
saying. I guess my point is like, is there anything locally, like, let's say the city hall, is the city hall doing anything? So, okay, I know there's a big warehouse on, what's that, off on Avenue right
Yeah, I
there.
live right
I don't know
there.
how many trucks come through there a day, but I mean, the instance where it said there was a rating on the monitor, saying that there's the city saying, look, all right, you need to cut down the traffic between this hour.
Yeah, how are they measuring that?
Yeah, like, is
Do they
that, is
have-
this something that, even if, that may not even be an issue, but I'm just using.
Are they counting the trucks?
Yeah, yeah,
Are
we're
they counting how
counting
many
the
sets of wheels go over a cord in the road?
Not
Or
the
how are they
city,
measuring that?
not the city.
Yeah, so that's another thing. One thing about organizing work is you have to like have the community support behind you. And another thing is just raising awareness about these issues and getting the community to support monitoring and control of these trucks. Yes, truck counting happens. I was actually just counting trucks a few weeks ago, and yeah, we count trucks. So I just done it way more than me. But yeah,
And actually, our highest truck count was last August. We're outside for 2 days in August, 3 hours. So we were outside from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m., 12 p.m. to 1 p.m., and 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. And in the combination of those 2 days and those 6 hours we were outside in August, we counted over 7,000 trucks and 7,000 trucks and 5 intersections of the Southwood.
Just to put
Wow.
some point of clarity there, when they're saying we are counting trucks, that is a specific organization.
Yeah.
I was
So you
just
can
gonna
speak
ask that,
about
yeah.
that, and then also, how is that being funded? And why is the area where you have them at, why was those areas selected? Because this is not a citywide thing that's going on, so that's simple.
And also a lot of trucks are before 9 to 10 a.m. They're at 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. So
Right,
you
that's
miss
all day.
all of
Right,
those.
right. So imagine that's just 6
Yeah.
hours of counting. That's
Yeah.
7,000.
So those are the ones that are afterthoughts. The ones that are doing all the trucking and stuff, those are already happening
Right.
way before that.
you had a question?
I have a question. I'm just getting here, but why was the South Ward chosen? Because I keep hearing you say the South Ward. And then my next question is, I work in education. I used to work in the South Ward. And I don't know if anyone has done any research on the impact that it has on children being born in that area, because unfortunately, a lot of the schools in the South Ward, I'm not trying to make excuses, but they're the schools where they're failing schools. They're the schools where most of the children are probably classified, and there's a lot of other things going on in the South Ward as well. So anyone doing research to see the impact on children being born in the South Ward and the impact it has on like maybe ADHD and all that stuff. That might be a little too deep.
That's very
So the
insightful.
first,
So,
so to speak on the first thing, the reason why I keep mentioning the Southwood and Newark is because Southwood Environmental Alliance focuses specifically on the Southwood and Newark because we are disproportionately burdened by, we have the second largest, we're in the backyard, the second largest port in the nation. We have the airport, we have several industrial facilities, with toxic emissions spewing into our community. We have the truck trips, with the diesel fuel, which is linked to carcinogens and, causing the asthma rates to go up. And we're just experiencing a whole lot of cumulative impact. And so we specifically focus on our South Ward because Kim Gaddy, our executive director, that's where she was born and raised her 3 children who are asthmatic, and which caused her to get started in this fight. And we're actually going to show a video on that just to speak on, how we're all involved and how it affects people personally and hits you on a personal level. And then with your second question, are we doing studies to see the health impact of people being born in North with health conditions like asthma? We do have several healthcare partners that we work with like Rutgers and a lot of other, let me see, Greater New York Healthcare Coalition, like they do studies and we're working with them to try to get that data so that we can see what's actually going on and how we can better advocate for, okay, this is what we're experiencing. A lot of our people here have this, and this is because of where we are and how we're being treated, how we're living, the regulations and the policies that are not implemented to better protect us. And that's why we're using that so we can better advocate to get that.
So we're still needing to study this.
Yes.
I mean, yeah, but there's also community partners that aren't us that are doing the work and that aren't environmental justice focused. So for example, like the school to prison pipeline is very heavily influenced by, mental health in schools and Black and brown children. So there are community partners picking up projects to see like the impacts of ADHD and living by a warehouse or air pollution, etc. We're just not doing that work. Yeah, but we're definitely like in conversation with Clean Hill Action, who does they're working on like 2 participatory action research processes right now, and yeah, so there are people doing that work. It's just finding spaces like this to come together and see who it is and who can join that fight with their.
So you're looking for something that's more of a helicopter view of who's focusing on what and how we can all pull it together
Right.
so we can share that information.
Yeah, and that's
It's
for
pretty
like.
much resource.
Yeah, resource mapping, yeah.
So I just wanted to quickly show you guys an example of looking for certain, I guess, things in the environment. The first one I decided to look at was air toxics, respiratory hazard. So basically where there is toxins specifically that cause respiratory conditions in people. I put my address. I live like somewhere here in the South Ward, but it gave me the whole map of Newark. And I cross-referenced that with a map of the wards. So very clearly here, you can see that like the central, south, and east ward are way more affected than this side of Newark, right? And just from this map alone, you can kind of see which communities need to be reached out to the most.
From here, I can see like a really dark spot.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
where it's the worst, I guess. And
What's located in that area that it's causing
It's
that?
the
Probably the
intersection
port.
of those 3 wards.
yeah, probably the ports. I'm
Highway.
pretty
Probably a
sure
highway.
the airport. Like,
So that's where you're getting most of your
yeah,
pollution.
from. Exactly.
The PM2.5 that you mentioned, 2 miscarriages, highest amongst Black women and
Really?
Hispanic women, significantly higher than white women. It's because of exactly what she's showing on this map.
Exactly.
That's very frightening. Because these are our futures.
Yeah, for me,
Before you move on, is that a website that you're using?
yeah, it's called the EJ map. And it's by the Department of Environmental Protection. You can just search it there. It's
New Jersey DEP.
Well, we know we have to start a letter writing campaign.
And I think as you spoke about having data, right? Like
Oh, yeah,
the
data
the
mining.
rationale for that is when you're talking about advocacy on the legislative level, right? You're talking about using that data to be able to legislate effectively.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to take my training as an advertiser and figure out how to focus it on the social aspect of it to get these messages across, because it's data mining. It's one of the things I forgot to ask Ashley about was list mining, where you can get these access to other people through lists, where you buy list management and you can get your messages out that way. But this is also something on statistics, so we're able to figure that out, so we know how to talk about what it is we want to go forward with.
yeah, and so honestly,
Because it's not going to change unless we do something. My son was born with has autism. They do not know what causes it. No one in my family had it. No one in my husband's family had it. Nobody heard of autism before this. What causes this?
Different.
You know what? Yeah. And at first, they didn't even call it autism. They called it pervasive developmental disorder, not otherwise specified. In other words, we don't know what the hell is wrong, but it's now it's prevalent, and it's like it used to be 1 in like 10,000. Now it's like 1 in 100. That's unacceptable. So, and when I was trying to advocate for my child. It's like, there was nothing. It was the dark ages. So it's up to us to get out there. When you're saying I'm just a parent, no, you're not just a parent. You gotta go out there and we gotta fight, because not everybody has the energy, the wherewithal to do it. So it's up to us. This is our community. So we need to go out and do that advocating, as you were just saying, making that letter writing campaign, working together and making that happen, and bringing this all up is very interesting.
Yeah, for sure. And we kind of just want to wrap up our like health data.
Oh, I'll keep you talking all day. After a while, you have to tell me, Margaret, no, go back.
One last question. Have y'all thought about maybe getting a group of kids together from the South Fork, maybe different high schools, elementary schools, and educate them and have them be advocates? Because I think they'll have a stronger impact.
It's very smart.
So one thing that Southwood Environmental Alliance is doing is we have a youth council, and not only is our key priorities air quality issues, water equity issues, but we also focus on the leadership training, and that's especially with the youth. And so we have the Green Alliance Leadership Academy, short for for the gala, and we make sure that kids are learning these things now, so that when they're older, and even now, they don't even have to be older. When somebody brings a kid and they say, okay, but what about me, right? It's like, what about you? How can we help you? That this is your future. So we want to make sure that they have the tools that they need to be able to successfully advocate for a better environment. So that's just one thing that we're doing.
Yeah, that's fantastic, because we gotta train everybody.
Exactly.
So
I wanted to go through all these. I know we're running a little low on time. We got half an hour left. But yeah, can you guys go around and maybe read some of these statistics? Like, we can do it in order, or what you find most interesting.
Air pollution has been linked to heart attacks, strokes, and low birth weight.
Yeah. So people who are disproportionately affected by air pollution, Black women, they're so, it's such a high mortality rate for them and their kids because of literally the place. I mean, they were growing up in. Yeah. Any other statistics you guys see that's interesting?
Poor air quality from climate-related factors like wildfires versus respiratory conditions.
Yeah. So like stuff like that agitates asthma. And honestly, somebody can live with chronic asthma in New Jersey and like North, and then go to California and their asthma's gone because the air quality there is just inherently better because it's not a city, or it's not all city. Yeah.
And then piggyback off of that, the fires that we just experienced in summer.
Canada.
Before that, from California, the wildfires burned so bad and it started.
Exactly.
And so in these environmental justice communities of concern, because they already have these conditions like the factories, warehouses, facilities, industries that are spewing toxic pollution. When the wildfires came, it wasn't just the wildfires that we were
it was
experiencing.
on top of everything.
It was on
Yeah.
top of everything else. So we're experiencing extremely hazardous air quality conditions. And the purple air monitors were actually used to help the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection see the hot spots in the different areas, because there's purple air monitors all around, and you can actually go online right now and look at this data in real time. So it helped them see what was going on in different areas and really send out alerts. So say, hey, your air quality is terrible. Maybe you should not go outside. These are some tips to help you stay safe in these conditions, right?
What you call it? Have y'all talked to City Hall about that? I don't know. I'm the type of person, every time something happens, I say something to City Hall. Do y'all talk to them about stuff like that? Because even that area that y'all talking about are going to look like, I've been over there, once, 3 times this summer, and it looked like that place be neglected with trash all on the ground. Like, I wouldn't let my kids walk over there. Certain places, I would not allow my kids to walk over there. Bad enough, my kids already, all 3 of them, the third one just started suffering with, like, basically when the weather changed, like, skin conditions. I went in there allow my kids to going outside, and not trying to be funny or nothing,
Yeah,
but
no,
it's like the trash is disgusting. To allow your grandmother, your great grandmother, anybody walk through streets or even get up in the morning, go say good morning to a neighbor. I don't want people to go outside over there.
Do we have anything in place where you have community cleanups?
Yeah.
Things like that?
Sure.
Yes,
All the time.
there's city cleanups, there's things that the city hosts, and then there's different organizations, community-based organizations like Southwood Environmental Alliance or Clinton Hill Community Action, where we have this summer we did a trash flash where we actually had several residents in the community come out, and we went around several blocks with trash pickers and garbage trash bags, and not only were we just picking up trash, but it was supposed to be a flash. So we were going on doors, knocking, speaking to residents, saying, "Hey, like, what's going on with the trash? Like, is this the environment that you want to be in? Do you feel clean in this environment?
I personally hate it.
Visually safe environment,
I
right?"
walk my dog and I also bring a trash bag. And I'm constantly picking up water bottles, candy wrappers, because I can't stand it. It's like there's a trash can right there. You couldn't walk 3 steps.
Right. Right. And then when you have a lot of trash, right? We talk about flooding. The
Yes.
waters, the
little
you have
canal
sewer
gets,
systems, right?
yeah.
The catch basins, they get clogged up and the water can't go where it needs to go. So then people experience flooding, and then in different
Yeah,
levels,
just in
disproportionate
East
levels.
Orange, yeah,
Right,
we have problems
exactly.
with that because it's trash that causes the blockages on the little canals, and it comes out, and all those people have flooded basements. And it does not need to happen.
Right.
They have a
And
program
it's
in North
because it's
where
trash.
folks, like community people, can be like a catch basin,
Yeah,
like warden, like I'm a catch basin,
We
like
have
warden on my block.
programs like that.
Like I clean it out
Where
because
people
like
go
it
in the
gets
catch basin.
clogged up. Yeah.
And they paint
They
them,
paint them. Yeah.
clean them, and they tend to them, make sure that everything gets to where it needs to go.
it's like a adopt a street or adopt a park program.
Yeah, they have several of those.
Like maybe it's something high school kids, like get the football team involved, or, the cheerleading squad.
That should be a movement, school automatically or something.
Yeah.
Maybe
I keep
the
it
kids
in
start doing it, like, damn, I get tired of doing this in school every day, do every other day.
Walk further to the garbage can, pop receptacles instead of.
You know what they do in Japan, right? The kids, they don't have janitors. The kids clean the classrooms. Oh, yeah.
I think it's definitely, you have to change the mentality, because like, I work at a high school and the kids leaving garbage on the table, and I go around and try to talk to them and say, this is our school, and they're like, no, it's the janitor's job, and you have to understand the mentality. Yeah, and I remember, not being funny, but I remember that building on Elizabeth Avenue, the one they closed, the big one, maybe 440. I have a couple friends who catch the train from Broadway and other areas, and they used to pass in the back of that building. They used to call, like, what the hell? People just throw their garbage bags out the window, and the whole back of the building was full of garbage.
Right.
It's a combination of both. It's usually people that live in the suburbs who have don't want to pay for the garbage collection. You see a lot of people. That's been an issue in North for years. People driving and dumping their trash in the city.
I've seen
There's
them
certain
do that.
spots in North where you could just tell. And for the life, I don't understand why there's no monitoring, like to catch these people doing it. But you can get, you talk about generating revenue, you can get a lot of people with that. But that's another story. But you see that for years, and that's one of those places where people. There's some North people too, but it's more people out inside. They just dump their trash. They don't want to.
So there's no community pride
They don't
in
want
that
to pay.
aspect of it.
Well,
And the other thing is,
sometimes people don't live here, they don't care.
Yeah, and you're saying that the janitor's job,
If they see them,
but that's what they think. So it's disrespectful to the janitor, not understanding his focus.
People bringing trash from their homes to their job site, dumping it in those.
Civil service employees from various counties coming down to the great city of Newark on their way to and from work. So I just clutch my pearls that's not on today, and I just make a better choice. They're like, oh my God, and I say I'm just parent.
You
Like,
know,
I need to with each other.
Yeah.
And I just, make a conscious effort because it's a learned behavior.
Yeah,
And
I also think it's kind of in a way.
a learned behavior
Because he
and
was saying that's the janitor's job. No, that's not the janitor's job. It's also disrespectful to the janitor, because you're thinking he needs to, that his job is to
A
clean
lot
up
of
your
kids
mess.
think like that. I don't know what it is because my daughter, I be buying stuff and if I buy it, she'll let it fall. She won't care what happened to her. And I'm like, girl, what's wrong like that? And like, I'm like, you know what? You only 11, but you gotta go get a job like next week because until you start doing stuff on your own, you won't understand the value of dollar. Like the dollar, like my last dollar, she would let my food drop, and I'm like, she like, my no, you don't care. It's something I don't know, and I teach you other than that.
But it starts at
It
home
starts at home.
because I teach preschool. So by the time they get to me, you think kids will know to get up and go throw in the garbage?
See,
No,
this
I'm
is
starting
clean
you
up,
off
clean
here.
up.
Yeah,
So when you're
everybody
sitting
knows.
down,
Like,
you have to get up and
it starts at
throw it
home.
in the garbage. If you were doing it at home, when you got here, you should already know to pick up your stuff and go put it in the garbage.
And
So
that's
it's
why
from
we're
where they're
trying
learning.
to like get parents to see the value in teaching these kids young, what it means to be environmentally aware, or what it means to, just take care of your surroundings, loving your community. If you love something, you take care of it, right? And if we love, your house, your space, your food, let's take care of that food,
She just have a tendency of not caring about. I don't know, like she cleans up like certain things and caring about with the not caring. I don't know if it's like I don't. It kind of bothers me.
Yeah, and that's what we talk about a little, like developing empathy, like why they should be. But we have a little intro.
We know we're on the top of like cleaning and things of that sort. As far as even like hygiene, you see in this day and age, hygiene with people in general, it's not like how it used to be as far as hygiene. So if we're at work together or we're in class together as a student, and you're hygiene, I'm breathing in this toxicity. You know what I'm saying?
Personal environmental.
Yeah, so it's like I'm still being inhaling this stuff, or
Yeah, just teaching courtesy to like
How much of that
people.
is just depression due to poverty?
that could be something.
You know,
but
that's
that
also
could
an
be-
issue.
Yeah.
Because when you live in an environment like that, when you're constantly dealing with poverty.
I'm not doing it because
People will put it
Of course they do. Of course they do.
It's not limited to,
No.
Or I seen one person, for example, they was like, they rather, this is like the thing with like teenagers, for example. They would rather go to the dollar store and buy deodorant, knowing they need clinical, or they need like a real deodorant, like the dollar store deodorant is not gonna help. So if the parent says, when you work the summer, go get you this or that, they're like, okay, then we can cheaper stuff. It doesn't work. So like,
I think that's a mindset. That, as long as they're on the path of trying to correct it,
I
the
could-
quality of what they
Right.
use, we could debate
Yeah,
that, but
so
at least they trying to do
they
something
trying
about
to do
it.
it.
You know what I mean?
They
Versus
listen to it.
somebody who's just
Just let it fall by the
don't
wayside.
care. Like,
Or you
I would
mention
take that person nowadays than somebody just totally.
So yeah, you try to correct it, but at the same time, I think it needs to be like,
I think there's also culture plays into it as well.
So for the sake of time, I
Lack
just
of
really
consistency.
Yes. I just want to play this for the sake of time. I don't want to run out. This is a really good conversation, and I'm gonna open it up towards the end so we can keep this dialogue going. But this is Kim. She's my boss at Clean Water, but also Sada's boss at Southwood Environmental Alliance, and we just wanted to give a little bit of her story.
Kim Gaddy of Newark has spent more than 20 years on the front lines fighting for environmental justice in New Jersey communities of color, starting in her own South Ward neighborhood.
As fourth generation Norther, I have lived in the city of Newark all my life. When I started in the environmental field, it was because of my children. I have 3 children and all of them are asthmatic. And it wasn't until my daughter was diagnosed at the age of 1 that I began to say, oh my God, what is going on? What can I do to kind of prevent the asthma rates, not only in Newark, but throughout the state? Because the one thing, when you see a kid gasping for air, you have no control over it. And so that started in my fight 20 years ago. So living in the city of Newark in the South Ward community, my backyard is the third largest port. And we have an airport as well. And what I noticed is that the cumulative impacts of pollution was directly linked to low income residents and residents who are people of color. And so I began to make the connection with the environmental injustices that was happening and the poor health that our community suffered from. 1 out of 4 children in the city of Newark has versus 1 out of 10 in the Essex County surrounding towns. And so when I heard that statistic, I said something has to be done. And what is actually causing this? I began to investigate the environmental degradation, the pollution sources, the increase in trucks. You know, we have 25,000 trucks that come in and out of the port. And so that is something that we easily solve with electrification of the vehicles, making sure we are changing how the different oils that we use to run some of the equipment. Also rerouting the trucks from coming into the neighborhood where children reside.
That's basically it. Sorry for the little pauses in between. Technology wants to be technology. But yeah, so the person that recruited me and recruited Asada, she started from a place of wanting a better environment for her children. And I'm sure all of you kids want that, regardless of where you're staying. And North and the South Ward is just one example of how community power can, create the conditions for change to happen. There was no environmental board, right, for Newark? There wasn't an environmental commission until maybe the mid 2000s, and Kim helped form that, right? So it's really about engaging and pressing your, the people you selected to represent you as advocates for you and your own issues.
So when we talk about these commissions, why people power is so important is because we can create a commission, doesn't mean you do anything. And so when it was created and it was, so when the politicians change, the commission members may change or the priorities of that politician may change. So they may not be putting resources. Commissions need support. All right. So that's not always just money. It's to empower them to be able to move things down the line. So if you guys know that we have a commission environmental commission, if you guys know that it's not active, or if there are things that they should be prioritizing, it's up to the people in this room to really go and articulate that to our mayor, to our council people. Like, hey, what is the environmental commission? What are their priorities around education? What are their priorities around these particular schools? So that's really what it takes: consistency and ongoing engagement.
So this is just a handout we gave that's like a summary of what we're presenting to you. The next part Asada is going to talk about is, we talked about all these issues. We talked about all these issues, and now it's time to talk about how we can unpack that heavy stuff with your kids. So, Asada, you want to take it away?
Yeah. Okay. So, as you see on the slide and in your handout, you want to make sure that kids understand what's going on. They already know a lot, this new generation, they have technology at an early age. They're very invested and always on their phones. So, it's a lot to process, but getting them started at an early age helps pave a way for a more sustainable future. So what you want to do is start with the basics, right? So the first point is, we have a special blanket of air called the atmosphere. And air is made up of different gases, and one of them is carbon dioxide, or CO2. So the greenhouse effect is when, this is basically helping keep our planet warm. Makes the earth habitable for us to live in, right? So, but sometimes, too much of one thing is not a good thing. And so when there's too much carbon dioxide, that causes the planet to get warmer and basically climate change happens, right? And the impacts, right? So hotter summers, melting ice caps, they, related to the children. So, say, yeah, this summer is hotter than last, right? I remember one time we experienced very little amounts of snow. Glaciers are melting. That's causing an impact to not only humans but the other animals in the ecosystem, right? So we want to make sure there's a good balance and touch on the heartstrings of the children a little bit. And then you have things like storms and floods. When hurricanes come, sometimes our houses get damaged, right? And just by doing little things like picking up trash, that can that can help mitigate the experiences we are having with climate change. At a young age, a child could either exacerbate or help mitigate what's going on with the climate, and want to make sure that they help mitigate it and not exacerbate it. And so make sure you have positive actions as well. As I mentioned, emphasize the small actions. Start having these conversations now. So when they do go to school, they know to clean up behind themselves. Or when I was in school, I would have my friends, whenever they wanted to throw trash outside, I would collect it myself. Like, okay, don't throw it on the street. Like, we live here, right? We want to make sure our community feels positive for us to be here. So just starting with that now, that helps put things, that helps make things better for the long run.
Excuse me, I have a question. For like a kid that's interested in environmental, is there like any resources that of that can help, like, I don't know, explain that? Because I mean, TikTok, obviously, that's good enough to really dive in. Is there any resources that you know for that? We have a couple. There are some like formal resources, like workshops and stuff you can take your kids to, but there are also informal, like little games you can play with them to see the effects. We have some games in here that we want to show you, but it's a little bit towards the end of the presentation. Right now we want to talk about developing empathy in kids. How do we get them to care about the environment, and how do we get them to take these issues as things that are personal to them and not just happening around them? The first one, like Asada said, is education, being appropriate in your language. Like, you talk to a 17-year-old different about climate change than you do a 5-year-old, right? See where they're at in terms of their own knowledge and your own knowledge, being truthful about, like, you might not know a lot about, wind turbines and how that affects the environment, but you do know some things that you can pass on to your kids. Modeling empathetic behaviors. So basically, doing what your kids would want, what you would want your kids to do. Picking up trash, even when you're out, seeing certain things and verbalizing it. Like, oh, this area, look at that warehouse over there. It's emitting a lot of gas, or there's a lot of trash on the floor, etc. And just having these casual conversations with them kind of helps them build up, not only absorb the information more, but have a context that they can use to understand climate change. Like I said, that's kind of connected to real life impacts. Talk about how their community is specifically impacted. Promoting empathetic action, so concrete steps like taking up trash or starting a recycling bin, etc. And then just fostering hope, which Asadi is going to talk about a little bit more. It's not all gray and sad because we're here, and as people who want to, effectuate change, I think that communities have a lot of power to change the spaces around them. I'm working with Winnie, who is the, I think, president of the Weekway Parks Association, on anti-violence campaigns, right? And that campaign specifically puts blue. I don't know if you guys have visited college campuses where they have those blue emergency phones, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we want to put something like that in Weekway Park so residents can feel safer walking through that park, because it's beautiful, but it's dangerous at the end of the day. So just giving them hope that there is more to just the damage they kind of inherited from the polluters of the past, the polluters of now. There are things happening in the community. Oh,
Excuse me, but what does violence have to do with climate justice?
Because parks are inherently a part of green spaces, and green spaces are very little in urban areas. And when green spaces are unsafe, so like bodies are being found in lakes in Weekway Park, that means that, you know, kids and parents aren't feeling.
They don't want to use them, right?
Exactly.
The
So,
the truckers that are hitting folks right outside the park while they're walking or waiting at the corner.
So what?
Trucks.
Trucks?
Yes,
Oh.
we've had, what was the early part of it last year? Outside, it was 3
Like,
people back to back.
I lost a nephew to a car accident outside of a park.
yeah, and that's the thing we also want to emphasize. All of these issues are intersectional. Like environmental justice affects racial justice, it affects, you know, poverty, etc. It's all interconnected. So when you talk about one, you can't talk about one without the other. You know? So even though it's I'm working with a parks association, that campaign specifically is going to make the park better and more safer for kids to go to. Yeah, and this is a little game I wanted to show you. So basically, this shows how the coral beach or how coral gets bleached. Hold on, let me start from the beginning. And with your kids, you can look at the little slider, and as water temperature goes up, which it is going up, you know, it gets white, right? But not only that, if it goes up and it's polluted, it gets white, and then it gets really, really dirty. And that's, you know, the reality of what. Well, I don't know if you can see it, the bar will move, but that's the reality of what we're experiencing right now. And to just visualize that for kids in, you know, a cartoon form, because all they do is watch cartoons, that would be good.
But this is kind of abstract for kids who live in the inner city. They may not understand the choral aspect of that. Is there something we could adapt or create that would be more reachable, something that they can more relate to?
Maybe to the beach.
To the beach, that's what I was
Yeah,
gonna say.
After the show.
But those are the ones that go to the beach, but the beaches are in New Jersey.
Yeah. It's still an issue that, like, I don't know, I feel like we also don't really give young people a lot of credit. Like, there are a lot of people interested in the environment.
But I'm saying is this is still abstract to a lot,
I
especially
mean,
to a
before
young
you
child.
explain it, but if you use this to explain it, I think what becomes less abstract is having these conversations.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. So another simulator I just wanted to show you really quickly, and there's a bunch of different ones, like you can see sea ice and sea level, but this specifically addresses global temperature. And from 1884 up until last year, you can see how the temperature increases. And this is just like a screen recording, but you can go sliding basically about how or where you would want to be in the time period. And this is today. It looks like we're on fire. And that's because comparatively, we really are on fire. So yeah, it's scary, but if you want your child to grasp the issue, resources like this are really important.
Can I add to that too? I like the comment. Looking at that, like you said, it is scary. And I sincerely believe the earth is a living, breathing organism. And it's going to correct itself, even if it has to wipe us out the door.
Exactly.
Mudslides, floods, whatever. And I mean, it's that's scary.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? At the earth, it's like getting a cut on your body. Your body is going to heal without your permission. I think the earth is going to heal itself without our permission, and it might wipe some of us out in the process of doing it.
Yeah,
You know what I
exactly.
mean? So I mean,
Already doing it.
it's doing it. Yeah, I mean, yeah, we got examples. It's doing it.
What I was taught, my grandmother is Native American.
I mean, I'm no scientist or nothing like that,
It's like
but
it'll adjust
the
itself.
earth is going to correct itself. It the end result, it may not be none of us in existence. We may be like the blue planet.
So I know that recently New Jersey adopted education across all of the school districts specific to environmental justice. Like how do we advocate to make sure that it's happening like in our schools?
Well, I would say organizations like PEP are really important. But also like going into your own communities and seeing who the leaders are, kind of, especially in terms of parents. So like who's the head of the PTA, who's on the PTA, etc. And then using that as kind of a leverage point because honestly, nobody's just parents. Nobody is just parents. Parents are superheroes. Like they really are. They are. My mother passed in March, and right now I'm taking care of my 10-year-old brother, and I just got legal custody of him.
Oh.
And it's been a lot because I'm only like 10 years older than him. But you know, parenting is a lot. And parents have power. So if you just go to your school boards with these issues and like have evidence and stuff, because they're not expecting, especially parents from like inner cities, to even care, right?
Exactly.
So if you go with your support system of other parents, of educators who believe the same things as you, because educators even leave spaces because they don't agree with the curriculum, right? So going into there with like people power and education for sure would create changes in the curriculum that you want.
In the workshop after lunch, we'll be able to touch on specific things that you can do in terms of environmental justice that may be relevant to your community and how you can take your advocacy and now put policy in place of those things. So we'll be able to identify.
That'll be nice.
Like an example, I want to point you out, Shaniqua. An example would be in Patterson. They have a Patterson Kids Count, right? And they use that to basically, it's statistics they use to look at the health data of kids in Patterson. And they notice like a very high level of lead within them. And now they're doing a whole project on lead service line replacement for houses. So like they took their neighborhood data and they were like, okay, it's causing this problem, you need to fix it. And you know, when push, it happened. Yeah.
I have copies if anybody, you know, wants. I have one in the car, only grab 3, but I can run out and get more on the break.
We can download it too.
And you can download it also. They also have one for North as well.
Yeah.
The kids download.
Your kids.
On the Advocates, New Jersey Advocates for Children website.
I was
They
thinking,
just got their loans.
I was thinking something else
What?
about the South Ward. I think a lot of times, in certain communities, our issues get cloudy or like, because of polluted, because other things going on in the neighborhood, like drugs and gangs and all these other issues that they kind of like bamboozle us and put all of that on the forefront, and we miss out on what's important.
It's all interconnected, like she
That's
said.
why that's important, what she said about intersectionality. If we, in our advocacy work, focus on those intersections and collaborate with each other, then regardless of what politicians want to do and want to push forward, we as the community can still push those issues forward. At the end of the day, we're the voters, right?
That's
So
right.
we drive their policies.
That's right.
What Kim Gaddy is a great example of a parent using that mantra of advocacy starts at home. Would any of us be here today if there wasn't some kind of an issue or concern that either affected us personally or affected our children? That's where advocacy begins. So we have to use that. What's our issues? What's our concerns? We have to build up support around that, even starting as small as starting within your family, within your neighborhood, within your school. And we have to collaborate. We have to contact these organizations. We have to use their data to build our advocacy, and we have to collaborate. And we have to let the politicians who work for us know that these are the policies that are important to us. We want policies built around these issues. It's all intersectional, it's all interconnected.
People power.
You need to be a pain in the ass.
That's the way to put it.
Comment / question. So we used to be on our green team in town in Fairlawn, and there's a lot.
We're still in the
Oh, we're still okay. So politics. And at one meeting one of the last meetings I went to, I said there's a lot of litter in Fairlawn, right? Like, why don't we get the town to put garbage bins through certain where the community usually meets, especially outside the high school and stuff. And I got pushed back right. The lady's like, "Oh, I don't want a garbage can in front of my house. Would you?" And I'm like, without a big, I'm like, "Yes, I would." Like, what? She's like, I'm like, because I don't want the garbage on my front lawn, on my lot. We should get that. And there was so much pushback that that's not happening.
So they're gonna throw it on your front lawn.
Right. So then the other comment. So that's an idea. If anyone's on the green team, maybe that could be one of the advocacy issues. Let's get garbage cans all over the public spaces. And the second comment is seeing young people do things themselves. When I was a younger person, I rode my bike for transportation to school, to the shopping center, whatever. That was my mode of transportation. And I would carry a garbage bag on my handlebars. So if I was at a stoplight or a traffic light and I saw garbage, I'd pick it up. And one of my tips, a grandfather with his grandson was like, wow, that's really good of you to pick that up. I'm like, well, we should, if everyone picked up one piece of garbage a day, how much more beautiful would the world be?
One of the programs in my high school was each class had to adopt a road.
Yes.
Really?
Yeah,
That was then.
and that was why we were given awards from the state of Pennsylvania for having the cleanest county. That's because it was cool to go on these field trips and pick trash up off the road.
Well, not so much. My younger son was in a program about 10 years ago. For emerging teens run by the Episcopal Church. And yeah, it was very interesting. So they had to do community service every week, right? They got to play and they got field trips and they this and that, but they also had to go out into the community and pick up trash was one of the things. Visit the elderly in the senior homes. That was another thing, right?
Yeah, we had senior socials.
And the kids got they had this grant, so the kids got $5 a week, like basically $1 a day for fulfilling all their obligations.
$5 a day. At the end of the 5 weeks, we got $125.
Oh, $5 a day.
We weren't paid anything. They just told you how to do it.
And that's another thing, just making fun of
I was just gonna say, we were talking, my brain is now moving. You was talking about the orange smoke earlier, right? So I was looking at my phone and thinking about how we can think about using technology to get information out. I was thinking about the app that actually has the weather. Like we talk, with the orange smoke, a lot of people knew what air quality numbers were, right? Like the news talks about it every day, but we didn't focus on it until our air was orange, right? Thinking about how we can maybe lobby some of these apps to put like air quality numbers and maybe put a little mask that says like today's a mask day, or my brain is just moving into advocacy. So just a suggestion.
I mean, the meteorologists were reporting it and it was part of their weather maps during the summer.
Right.
And as you can see, they
stopped.
stopped.
Yeah.
Abruptly, but it was an ongoing
Right.
trend
All through the summer.
Yeah.
Because of the wildfires, why isn't that always a thing?
Exactly.
We all look at our local weather reports, right? So, and it's accessible
on
from
our
our
phones.
phones. Why isn't the air quality measure a permanent part of those weather forecasts? Yeah.
If you have a smartphone, mostly it does come with that, but teaching people to use it and turn it on, I think is part of the thing as well.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people have smartphones today.
And I would say as far as like outreach goes to reach the children, I remember growing up, we used to be like, don't be a litter bug campaign, like those like quick little like one-liners that we could possibly teach the kids. I'm thinking of radio and the Girl Scouts meeting, like
You know what's
But it doesn't talk about air quality.
There's a lot of parents that missed it, or they don't really care. They give up on their children. There's like 20 of us, but I don't have kids in the bed. 20% of us is probably around our everyday kid. And our kids make a difference, but our kids make a difference compared to, it's a lot more kids that don't have somebody that they can seek, to look to make a difference. Like, I'm gonna give you a prime example. My father passed away. He passed away like 2 years ago. I have a mother, but my mother is kind of like, she don't care. So even, not like she don't care about grandkids, but I think she kind of like depressed or something. My kids don't have the grandparents role model. So I gotta teach them from the mother, their father not around, the father, the grandparents. I don't know certain things. You get what I'm saying? Yeah. So even like to teach these kids to clean, there's certain kids that don't, they hanging around friends all day. I just seen a girl on the bus yesterday with her hair half done and she moving her clothes from one house to another with her friends because her father just hit her out. Like, is this around is bad. There's a lot of parents that don't get, they give up too easy on these children. And even if we make a difference, it's not gonna help everybody. And it's so sad, it's sad to me because like you send a kid out there that's clean and trying to make a difference to somebody else, sometimes that negative behavior overminds what you teaching your child.
Yeah.
It's scary because then they go around your children and teach them whatever,
Or
you
they'll
just can't be a
become
superhero
acclimated that
to, you
it's
can't be a
okay.
superhero to everybody, and it's so sad how much these parents give up on their kids, like, it's sad.
Like regarding this situation, because I also deal with the youth battle program, mentorship program, and when I have witnessed firsthand in this day and age, and I only started the program because of what I've been through, growing up and who I became. It's not, and I can vouch for myself. 95% of the time that I have learned, it's not the parents or the guardians that actually raise the children. It's the children. And when I was going through what I was going through, I have learned kind of recently, still try to not take too much ownership. It was me. It wasn't the people that was raising me, from my parents and my grandparents. Once you sit and look at it, you start having your own children, and you realize what I was told not to do, and I was just being, I didn't have to be disrespectful. You could be disobedient. If your parents said come home at this time, and you like no, or you can't do this, the first thing you want to do as teenagers back then, I'm out of here. I want to go to Keisha's house with Keisha. I'm gonna let her do whatever she want to do, and I'm gonna cry, and I'm gonna talk about how my parents were so bad. But you don't learn until you get to be a certain age and you put in that situation where you're the parent. And your children are now doing the same thing you did. They trying to do the same. The good thing is you pick up on it because you're like, you know what, I did the same thing. But even talking to the guys and the girls, it's themselves, and they want to be. They're not realizing that the people that live in this way is actually really hurting. Your parents really care. You know, your parents want you to be in this program in school. They want you to be in this or do that, or they want you home at a certain time. Because if you're living in Patterson, it's crime. You have so many children that lost their lives, or somewhere they shouldn't have been, or you don't want your child to be, and you're being disobedient, don't want to listen, or you're cursing your parent out, or you want to stand on the corner when your mom said, come home. Or you should be home doing homework, but you're outside, or you're skipping school, and your mother doesn't find out to back to school. So it's so much of that going on that overlooked. So the child, I would go tell somebody, for example, my father and my mother put me out. No, she didn't. That's how it looked to me because of the conversation we had. But what happened was, I thought I was grown enough to pack my stuff and leave. Because technically, your parents really can't put you out because that was a diaper case because you're still a minor. And when they call, they're in trouble. So what happens? We call the cops and say the child ran away because you got to cover yourself too. But this is what happens so much. And I have a lot of youth that call me or say this, and I will go talk to them and explain to them, and that's what I think I was put to do because I did so much of what they're doing. You get what I'm saying? Or what they trying to do. It's to say, yeah, it was. So it's just like sometimes some people look at it like that, and I want people to look at it that way too. Oh, I'm being possibly, let's just say, put out, or I didn't get my way. So you don't get your way. As teenagers, what teenagers tend to do, and it's even getting younger. So yeah, they start at like 10 now, wanting their way. Then they don't get their way. They got a story to tell. And the story is all over the place until it then flips on you. Because the person that takes them in, it could be a friend, a parent, it flips. And now you're the person they're talking about. And they're like, well, your house dirty, and this is gonna be it just flips. And it takes a cycle.
So from somebody who's kind of still in the position of like, oh, I see what you're talking about, but like, I just want to, when I'm like 2 years removed from being a teenager, I'm like, yeah, I could see myself messing up back then, but I still feel well, first of all, just to wrap up, because I don't want to keep up past lunch. I know, it's time, but making programs and stuff desirable for kids is another thing. Like instead of marking, oh, now you have to do this after school thing as like a punishment. It's like you can get engaged, and the older kids get, the more you want to like gear them towards being serious in life. And these programs are not only good job opportunities, but also you can go to college for free doing certain activities. And environmental justice is one that's really popular right now, especially with like volunteer services and stuff. So yeah, just making sure you I guess get them excited about it, regardless of how boring it might seem to them. Just finding something that intersects their wants and interests, and then them growing as people. But yeah, Asada has a little bit to say about the what we are doing in Newark and
Wait, excuse me, I just like to chime in that there are also those households where the parent or parents are working 2 and 3 jobs.
Yeah.
Right? And they're not home, not because they don't care about their kids. They're not home because they care, right? And they cannot be there, right? And like you said, it gets passed on to the children end up raising the children. Actually, one day, a friend of mine who owns a Chinese restaurant, he took me to Chinatown with him, and we went to this house, this one apartment, right? The girl who answered the door couldn't have been more than 9 years old. Maybe she was, all right? And she was the person in charge of the household all week long because her parents work in New Jersey and they live, in an apartment where 10 people like sleep in that apartment in shifts. And they live there all week long until they can get home one day.
yeah, and that's a difficult thing too. I think we also have a responsibility to